Technologies. He's come all the way from California to come give a little speech here and answer some questions. I'm sure you guys all have some good questions for him. But yeah, without further ado, we've got Kay here, and yeah.
Appreciate very much all of you coming. Thank you very much for your time. I'm very honored. My name is Kenneth Morrow. I run a company called Trichome Technologies for 35 years and have been in the cannabis industry for 35 years. We're a molecular genetic research company. We've bred over 200 strains of cannabis. We've won many cups since 1997. Don't know it. Got some of the slides ready and stuff like that. To start off where I came from is one of the very first people to pioneer large-scale cultivation in the United States and take it to a high-tech level. And as well as breeding high-level genetics and things like that, you ended up with a lot of waste. A lot of the waste ended up into how do you make concentrates? Where did the art of hashish go? And there was only two books. There was Cannabis Alchemy and Marijuana Chemistry by Michael Starks and Dana Gould, and they didn't really tell you how to make hashish. They gave you a loose reference of how to make hashish. But there was no books, there was no information. So with a large amount of waste and high quality waste, it was like, well, how do you do this? And I have very many friends in the industry, and I'd pick their brains and things like that. But then a book called A Treasury of Hashish came out by a man named Dr. Alexander Shumack. And it kind of gave you the loose folklore of the whole thing, like, here's what country does what, when they harvest, when they seed, when they store for a year, and then they press, and all the nuances, but it didn't really give you the how-tos or anything like that. So I seriously investigated how to do dry seed. So I wrote one of the first published articles on how to do dry seed, as well as wrote one of the very first articles on how to do Rick Simpson, what we know today as Rick Simpson oil, but I didn't really write it as Rick Simpson oil. I just wrote it as how to make a hash oil, if you will. And then from there it turned into, a friend, David Watson, who ended up starting a company. The most known today is GW Pharmaceuticals. He started a company many years ago called Hortifarm and investigated a whole host of things. But he basically through a chain, Neville Schumacher from Holland met an American who told him that basically, in essence, the light stuff floats, heavy stuff sinks, and that if you put marijuana in water and freeze it and stuff, you would get a separation. So they wrote a loose paper, and he offered that for sale in High Times. And I got that paper and looked at it, and it basically said to take raw marijuana, put it in a blender, turn the blender on, and in essence you got a milkshake. But there was something there, so I investigated that and wrote one of the first water extraction articles. And then from there, started investigating what we know today, BHO extractions, and wrote one of the first BHO extraction articles in the year 2000 for a magazine in England called Red Eye. I wrote it strategically for that market because they had no marijuana to really blast, so to speak, and I didn't want to write it for the market in 2002 in the California market because there would be a lot of explosions from then till now. But I was doing this a long time ago and pioneered a lot of this stuff and wrote an article called The Art and Science of Cleaning Concentrates and popularized what we now have, the use of the vacuum drying ovens and all that kind of stuff. So most people didn't even know if they needed a drying oven, what it was for, or how to use it, or anything else. And that company across international is now doing $3 to $4 million a month. So there's a lot of potential in this industry. It's incredible. And then from that, it turned into terpene isolation and everything else. And that's where we're at right now is, pure terpene isolates. And that's where the future is going to be is there's a certain segment of the population that's juicing, a certain segment of the population that's doing Rick Simpson oil. These are two different compositions. You're talking about THC and decarboxylated delta-9. The whole plant composition can't be helping everybody. There's got to be isolated components that are actually doing these things and responsible for these things. And that's where the pharmaceutical companies come in. They'll find this antagonist that's good for tumor reduction or anti-inflammatory or cancer or Alzheimer's research, but they've got to go through clinical trials with rats and humans and stuff. So they've got a purpose, but the people in here will always lead this industry. They will come up and innovate the new products, the new strains, the new what to do with them and everything else. So the future is really incredible. So basically that's what my credentials are and things like that. But that metamorphosized into large-scale cultivation. I consult for some of the largest gardens in the world. Currently in Israel, I consult for a company that produces cannabis for 25 cents a gram. High quality cannabis. But it's done with the emphasis on high quality, but efficiently. And that's one of the biggest things I'd like you to take away today is this market is in its infancy, unlike, say, Colorado or California. In California, pounds are going for say, $1,000 a pound, and it'll even be lower this season. Each season, there's more produced than the previous year. Wholesale prices in Colorado are $1,800 a pound. I mean, at this point, I tell people in the new emerging markets like Las Vegas, like, look, don't devote $250,000 on a drying and curing room or the equipment that goes with that, because the new matrix is you take 10% of your product, the very best you can produce, you put that on the shelf as flowers. The other 90%, you ripen that up, you bring it back into the room. You don't cut it down and replace it. Why would you cut down a plant that is 2/3 unripe? Then you expose that to light, then you ripen it up. You're not really trying to get those dense nugs for the shelf. You're trying to increase the essential oil content by 25%. Then you raise that essential oil level by 25%, and then you take it and you fresh freeze it. And the implication of just taking it and fresh freezing it, I've got a client in Colorado that spends between $25,000 and $35,000 per week just to trim. That's $100,000 to $140,000 per month, and $1 million per year. I mean, in a Vegas facility, if you can save yourself $1.5 million per year on drying and trimming and curing, and just going to fresh frozen, and you're producing good quality genetics that are over 20%, you're going to get over 100 grams of concentrate from that pound. Sell it at rock bottom prices of $40 retail, and you're turning that pound into a $4,000 pound. I mean, that's incredible. You're producing very high-end, high terpene content products for the customer at a very affordable price, saving yourself millions of dollars. And again, it's all about efficiency, the cost of production. I mean, if you're producing something for $2,000 and the price slips to $1,000, you're going out of business. I mean, this is just not how real businesses operate. And when I say efficiency, I mean, if it takes you half the day to water, you've only got the rest of the day to do the things you have to do. Most of these things are done reactively. The people rush into the facility, no matter how big or small, and do the things they have to do. They haven't pre-planned. We're in a situation now where you can get a spreadsheet and figure out when you're floating for the next 5 years. Because guess what? No one's arresting you. No one's going to stop you from doing what you're doing. You can pre-order your materials. You can have everything on site the way it's supposed to be. Run it like a regular company, but at the height of efficiency. I mean, that is what ultimately dictates the final price of the product. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing I've got to say is efficiency. Efficiency in production, no matter how big or small. And then, the emphasis, I see a lot of large-scale facilities that don't really understand the art of drying and curing. I mean, the art of drying and curing here is different than in Denver, and it's also different than Arizona and Las Vegas. I mean, the temperature differentials, the 5,000-foot elevation, the 0% humidity on sometimes, and then 2 days later it's melting. You've got 80% humidity. The drying and curing rooms have to be akin to a humidifier and dehumidifier in the room, kind of sort of fighting it out. You can't dry it too quickly because you'll lock in the chlorophylls and everything else, and it'll taste like hay or what have you. I see a lot of that in Colorado. A lot of mid-grade, ridiculous garbage product. Very rarely do I see product in Colorado that I want. It's very over-dried. The essential oils are gone. It's just like a popcorn, as opposed to California, we've got that marine layer influx, and you guys are close to the water too. So, I mean, you've got that snow and that 0% humidity of minus 30 degrees and stuff to deal with. But, technically you can grow in a greenhouse year-round. It's just find the place that everybody else is growing. I was out in a store today and seen a local grower that produces flowers. I mean, that guy has to hit a 2-week window. He produces Easter lilies that are going to sell within a 2-week margin. The same guy also probably produces poinsettias that also have a 2-week margin. So there's some very sophisticated growers out there and farmers out there. And also encourage you to not just study all the marijuana cultivation stuff. Go call up your local grower, the guy that's really doing big ag. I mean, you'd love to. He's not treated like a rock star. He doesn't get to speak in front of a panel like this, and he knows more than I'll ever know. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know. He deals with real world situations. There's the periodicals that I really like. Is one is called Nursery Management and Production. The other is Greenhouse Management Production. And these are straight magazines that come from, and all of them tell tales of the same things you deal with: whiteflies, aphids, fungus gnats. And, the bugs and the disease, we're not the only ones that deal with these things. These people deal with these things on a large scale. And I explain to people the narrow margins that they survive on. Some of these people that are producing plants for, say, Home Depot, they know they're surviving on a 23-cent margin. So with the price of shipping or fuel or containers, I mean, they've got to factor these things in. And this industry has to operate like that in the future as well. I mean, you just can't, but part of the problem is the manufacturers. Right now, the manufacturers aren't really catering to our industry, be it the lighting manufacturers. Our industry is spending millions and millions of dollars per year on lighting, but that lighting is very inefficient because Westinghouse, Sylvania, Philips, these people don't recognize our industry in any way, shape, or form. They're not catering to our industry. They're not spending money for research and development. Most of the lighting that we get, 1,000-watt halides, 40% of the spectrum is actually used. The other 60% is unnecessary spectrum, and output is ultimately heat that we've got to turn around and pay to get rid of. But in the future, those companies are going to be forced to address this industry, recognize that we are a force to be reckoned with, and cater to our industry as far as, you're going to be seeing ads that say, we've got the best grow light. No, we've got the best grow light. So they're going to be forced to put R&D into actually producing quality equipment. But it's a brilliant opportunity for everybody in here to produce the quality equipment of the new world as well. I've talked to 3 or 4 individuals out here just in the past 2 days that are like, I've got a great idea, does this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, do it. There's never been an opportunity in my life or your life that we have the ability to create the new mouse or the new keyboard or the new computer. I mean, there's incredible opportunities there. To brand your products, and that turns into, like, most of my days are spent in lawyers' offices these days just on protection for copyrights, trademarks, and patents, and all this other kind of stuff. And I highly encourage the brands that you create, the name of your dispensary, all that kind of stuff. You have to trademark this stuff. You have to protect it because it's stuff that will be acquired by large corporations in the future if you choose to sell to these corporations or work with corporations or whatever. But right now, so you have to, if you're going to be in this business and expect to have a brand, you've got to protect that brand. So there's a lot to do in this industry. Don't know, just going through the slides and stuff like that. Mostly I just kind of wanted to give my qualifications. Did a story to Cuba. You can go online, check that out. Long before Cuba was popular, I went to Cuba and brought 2 of George Cervantes' books, a bunch of genetics, and a lot of information over there to my friends to teach them how to grow and get a grow scene started there. So it's a wonderful nation and stuff, and it's kind of a neat story. But mostly I just kind of wanted to get all the formalities, like, the articles I've written for High Times Magazine for 20 years. You can look those all up. Was included in this article, The Greatest Grow Rooms of All Time. That was preceded by being included in 1999, the top 25 grow rooms in the history of High Times Magazine. These are all their monikers, not mine. I didn't give myself these titles, but they are what they are. So I've participated in this industry a whole lot. I've seen it, from the beginning. Again, 35 years. But wanted to roll through these, slides real quick. And, here's the best garden I've ever seen. I mean, this is GW Pharmaceuticals. You can see the uniformity is absolutely incredible. That's not a $400,000 pop-up plastic greenhouse. That's a multi-million-dollar glass house. You can see it's light deprivation, it's supplemental lighting. This thing's never been infected with any kind of bug or disease in 5 years. It runs at the height of efficiency. There's a moving aisle. One man can go in here and separate that whole facility. It is the height of efficiency. And this is how it needs to run. And the more efficient you run, the more proactive you can be, meaning the more attention to detail, the forethought on quality. Some people think that you can't produce high quality cannabis in a large scale, and I'm saying that yes, you can. It's very obtainable, very doable. I mean, some of the practices changed, meaning that this is an organic-based soil garden. You really can't put something like this in jeopardy by putting organic waste in it. The potential for bug and disease to run riot in something like this is very, very high. So, you've got to comply to ISO standards and things like that. So there's a whole different ballgame there. So it does relate. You can produce high quality marijuana in a large scale commercial setting, that's for sure. And this is a facility in Colorado. again, you know, you can produce large scale. There's an article I wrote for a magazine called Burst High Japan, and that's just basically a soilless mix. I was talking to a gentleman earlier, and we were talking about soil compositions, and it's like, you know, that's a 1/3 super soil, 1/3 vermiculite, 1/3 perlite with some water crystals in it. I mean, and that's 3/4 gallon containers, and that gets into your efficiency. I mean, why? I mean, I wanted them short. I wanted them to just do that. So why would I use 5-gallon pots when I could get away with a 3/4 gallon container? I mean, the unnecessary waste involved in this facility. I seen something that said that 1% of our power in the United States is produced goes to produce indoor cannabis, and you know that to me is an egregious waste. And you could go like Depro greenhouses, this, that, the other thing. There's so many other methods that are going to be utilized in the future, you know. But you know, there's many, you know. Everybody in here that grows a certain way, they like their way, and I say stick with it, because there's always ways to make it better, you know? And everybody wants a good grow book, and I say there is no best book, you know, including the one I'm reading. Buy them all. There's something in there for everybody. I have read everybody's book. I've given photos and participated in everybody's book. I just got an email from George Cervantes saying, hey, my new book's out. What's your address? You know, they're all my friends. I love them all, and every book has something to learn in it. So, you know, buy every book and study it, and yeah, that's how I got where I'm at. And again, these are just large-scale production shots. I mean, I literally go from town to town and see the largest legal production facilities in the world. And on that, you know, running down, there's the article for the one of the first published Rick Simpson Phoenix Tears articles, and that goes into the first dry sieve article, and that goes into first water hash article, and that was published in Rob Clark's book Hashish later on. And there's the very first published butane article, and that goes into, you know, other included articles in High Times magazines, you know. And again, you know, proof is in the pudding. I mean, there's a patent I filed. I mean, you know, you can let Big Pharma control this industry, or you can control this industry. So I took it upon myself to figure out a novel way to do a certain thing. And in that, I've spent many hours in lawyers' offices trying to formulate the patent, not for the sole purpose of protecting, profiting from that patent, but being able to have intellectual control of that methodology. So therefore, this property, I get to license this technology. So I get to choose what company I license this to, a good company, a bad company. You know, so in some way I can kind of sort of participate in that transition to Big Pharma. You know, Big Pharma shouldn't be able to take a Rick Simpson article or oil and sell it back to our HMO for $1,000 for a month's supply when it costs you and I $25 a month to supply. So that's what happens with patent and large corporations and stuff. And